Hi, everybody, to another interview with Recent Revolution. My name is Kotoha Kudo, and today I'll be interviewing Anika Parker, who currently lives in New York. She is a senior, currently studying in the UN International School, and we will be talking about her experience with eating disorders. And I just want to say right before the interview that this topic is going to be a very touchy subject, and therefore, if you, there's just a pre-warning about it, and also this whole interview will be completely based on Anika's personal experiences. So please understand that your experiences might differ. Hi, Anika.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Of course, thank you so much for joining us today. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. So, my name's Anika. I'm a senior at the United Nations International School in New York City. And yeah, I'm super excited to be here today and share some of my perspective.
Perfect. All right. So let's get straight into it. So before we actually get into the interview and your personal experiences with eating disorders, what in general are eating disorders and what do they mean to you specifically?
So, eating disorders are basically illnesses where people's behaviors and regarding eating and also their body images are impacted. And there it usually comes where people are really like preoccupied with the food they eat and kind of fixated on things around food and like behaviors around food. And there's a wide range of eating disorders. There's anorexia, bulimia, binge eating, but there's also a lot more. And some that are like not even classified in some cases because it's such like a wide term and can encompass so much. And for me, I initially suffered with anorexia and it later evolved into orthorexia, which I can go into those terms a little later. But
Mhm.
basically, anorexia in general is like over restricting food and like regards to all food, whereas like orthorexia is like kind of hiding it under the facade of eating healthy, I would say. So
Mhm.
like restricting even unhealthy foods, and also like analyzing the nutrient content of food and making decisions whether things are healthy or not based on what's in it, kind of.
Mhm.
And I think it's definitely a problem for a lot of people because a lot of people hide anorexia, um, like under orthorexia. So like they really have anorexia, but they try to like hide it by saying that, oh, I'm eating healthy and this is just all part of it, when really it's a big problem.
All right. So could you maybe get into what your experiences were like with anorexia and orthorexia and when did it begin as well?
Okay, yeah. So I would say it started a really long time ago when I was like quite young. I would say around fifth grade. And at that point, I didn't really know what an eating disorder was, which I think is also a big problem because we should really teach kids on like problems like these a lot earlier than they actually do. But so yeah, I was in fifth grade before I moved to Spain. So I was living in New York then. And I remember being on the chubbier side compared to the kids in my grade. And we were definitely at that like vulnerable part of our lives before middle school. And and yeah, so I was before moving to Spain, I was about to move to a new school. There was a lot of uncertainty in my life. I didn't really know what the future held at that point.
Mhm.
So I was like, okay, let me like take control of my life a little bit. I knew to lose weight that you needed to eat healthy and exercise. So I started doing those two things. And it definitely worked at the beginning. I felt a lot more energized. I felt stronger. Um, People around me were supporting me, and like I was definitely healthy. But then it kind of like went down a downward spiral where it just got worse and worse. And that went through to when I was in Spain, and that kind of just, it was like getting better and recovering, kind of changing my mindset, but then falling back into my old ways. And then I realized it was, I think initially I thought everybody kind of felt this way about themselves and had this similar body image that I felt and acted the same way around food. And it was only later when I got older that I realized that this is a problem that not everybody has, but a lot of people do have. And if I reach out, I can actually um, fix it.
Mm-hmm. So could you get into what the difference is between anorexia and orthorexia?
Right, yeah. So as I said before, anorexia is kind of restricting food in general. So it's like eating smaller portions of food, kind of obsessing over exercise as well, all to like lose weight and be like the ideal body image, I would say,
Mhm.
or body standard, yeah. And orthorexia is so rather than, it's also restricting food, but it's also looking at what the food you're eating. So for example, if it's like super unhealthy, you wouldn't eat it even though it's like really low in calories. So it's like obsessing over the like the nutrient content of food as well as restricting.
Hmm. So I think a lot of the time when people that when people just hear about eating disorders, they don't really know too much about it. So could you tell me from your experiences what this eating disorder had, like what kind of impact did it have on you more mentally?
Right. I think eating disorders come with like feelings of isolation in many times because food is definitely, at least in my opinion, something that brings people together.
Mm-hmm.
And pushing yourself away from food is like pushing yourself away from people. So like settings like, I don't know, celebrations and like holidays where everybody sits together over a meal, I honestly had feelings of anxiety and guilt around those periods of time. So I would see myself distance, and like even when my friends went out for dinner, it was like this big thing how I would plan my day around looking normal when I'm eating there. But like earlier in the day restricting so I could like save my intake for the afternoon. And it just like it takes a really big toll on your body because you're constantly planning and thinking. I think that also comes with like a mental state of like obsession because you're obsessing over numbers, you're obsessing over what you're eating, when you're eating, how you're eating, who you're eating with. It's just like constantly thinking. And I
Mm-hmm.
think, yeah, that definitely takes a detrimental toll on the body.
Mm-hmm. So would you say that your eating disorder was basically taking over your mental capacity and the way that you thought, just how you interacted with food, not only just food, but also just how you interacted with people in general?
I would definitely say so, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Especially because of the feelings of isolation it came with. I like definitely saw myself distancing myself away from people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, just like kind of just staying to myself and getting like doing what I thought was right for myself when it really definitely was not.
Mm-hmm. So, if you're comfortable with sharing, what specific event do you have in mind that reflects the dangers of eating disorders in general from your experience?
Yeah. Um, I remember I went, so I had to go to the doctor multiple times, especially in the period when I was in Spain between sixth to ninth grade, because I think that was like the bulk of when my eating disorder like took place and when it was kind of the worst.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I moved in ninth grade to New York, and I kind of like realized it was a problem there, and then I told my parents about it. But before that, I hid it, like nobody really knew about it.
Mm-hmm.
So my parents took me to the doctor a lot because I was quite underweight. And they always like kind of poked and prodded around it, like, oh, are you obsessed? Like, do you see her like obsessing over the way she looks, and like what are like feelings at home? But like I would never really share those feelings with anybody, whether it be the doctor or my parents. So I remember getting a blood test, I think around seventh grade, and the doctor seeing my result, and I had a really high level of bad cholesterol, so like the LDL cholesterol. And they were like, this is a problem. Like, why is this? She seems healthy. She exercises. She eats really healthy. My mom's like, she eats too healthy. She's eating healthy all the time. Um, and I guess like they're like, yeah, maybe just like watch what she eats and like incorporate more foods with like good cholesterol into her diet. So that continued, and I remember in high school when I started seeing like a nutritionist who was also a therapist, and we were talking about my health history and stuff like that. And I brought up this point, and she was like, yeah, definitely we see this in people with eating disorders or who are malnourished because the body supplements the system with bad cholesterol when it doesn't have enough good cholesterol. Like it can't make enough cholesterol for itself. So yeah, my body was working on overdrive.
I think we're
Um,
having internet problems.
oh, are we?
Yes. Okay, no, you
Hello?
can go on. Yeah,
Okay.
it's fine.
Where did I cut out?
You said good cholesterol and bad cholesterol and how you went to the doctors and yeah, and how
Okay,
bad cholesterol was taking over because it wasn't producing enough good cholesterol, essentially.
exactly. That's
Yeah.
pretty much it. So yeah, it's just amazing what the body does to like to supplement what I was missing out on, but it was really hurting myself.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think that was definitely a way. in which it impacted me, like my body.
So you talked a little bit about how you were eating really healthy and how you were exercising a lot, but what does that specifically look like? Like, what did you eat in a day? Or
What did I eat in a day? I mean, I guess everything was kind of planned out. So like I was very regimented in what I would eat for each meal, and also timing. I think that's something that was really important for me. So like I would eat at certain times, and when my times got thrown off, it was like very like stressful for me, which is like so crazy to think about. But yeah, and I think it was also like I have to eat like a very balanced meal. So it was like the typical, like I would have to eat carbohydrates but also protein, and like I wouldn't eat a lot of like foods that I thought were like unhealthy when a lot of them were healthy, which is also crazy now looking back on it. But yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I got in touch with you after I listened to your podcast with Carolina on teen introspection, and you talked a little bit there about your recovery from your eating disorder. But could you maybe talk a little bit about how you were able to recover, and how long it took you and what you specifically did?
Yeah. So in around, I think it was 10th grade. Yeah. In around 10th grade, I decided like enough was enough. Like this is a problem. And if I actually want to get better, I have to tell the people around me.
Mm-hmm.
So the first people I told were my parents. And I guess they kind of suspected it. But like at that point, I was like doing okay. But then I would like fall back into it. It was kind of like doing better and then going back into my old ways. So
Mm-hmm.
um, we decided that we needed to see somebody who specialized in this area. So we went to a nutritionist who was also a therapist, and we talked it out with her. And yeah, so she helped me come up with ways to face it and start my recovery journey. So it was definitely incorporating foods that I thought were scary, which is like a term that's often used in the eating disorder community called fear foods, which are foods that people with eating disorders often associate with feelings of guilt and anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just like incorporating more of those foods into my diet, just pushing myself to like go out and eat more in a restaurant because I had a lot less control over my food when I was eating outside.
Mm-hmm.
And just like eating eating to enjoy myself rather than eating for nutritional needs. So like food is definitely also for the body, but it's also for the mind. Like it makes you happy, it makes you spend time with your friends. So it was more like what I felt in the moment rather than what my body felt it needed in the moment. So
Mm-hmm.
learning to eat again, which is like so crazy because learning to eat is like so innate. It's like something we learn to do as we grow up, but like it's almost people with an eating disorder like forget how to do that and have to learn how to do it all over again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That must have been really tough just to, learn how to enjoy eating again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so could you tell me a little bit about the stigma around eating disorders in general and what specifically might fuel the stigma, of eating disorders?
Yeah. Um, so I definitely think there's a big stigma around eating disorders, and I think that that plays into the fact that a lot of people continue to suffer from them because they're too afraid to speak up about them because of the
Mm-hmm.
stigma. And I think that the stigma kind of stems from um, people like associating eating disorders with something that's like very superficial and like associated with appearance and weight and vanity and diet culture when it's really a much deeper like more mental problem that really affects you not only on the outside but definitely in the inside, and it's often associated with other mental health issues like depression, anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
etc. So which are also often come with a stigma. And it's great that we're like raising more awareness about it today. But I think in a lot of times, because eating disorders are a form of mental illness, so I think it's important that we incorporate more awareness about eating disorders as a mental health issue to make sure that people are aware and know what it's like and can like help the people around them who suffer from it.
Mm-hmm. How do you think the media, like in general, just portrays eating disorders?
Um, yeah, I think definitely, especially with social media today, almost glamorizes eating disorders to an extent because there's definitely a harmful like body or ideal body image that is like placed in the media and seen in the media. And yeah, like I feel like people often talk about like dieting and eating healthy, and everybody has their own form of, oh, you drink this tea and you become skinny, or you eat this food, or promoting this, I don't know, pill that like makes you all of a sudden lose weight. And I think it's definitely, yeah, the media almost like feeds off this kind of energy, this like this diet culture, I would say, that promotes eating disorders.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think and also like the ideal body image that is portrayed in the media is so false. Like there's so much like Photoshop and Facetune or whatever,
Yeah.
and that definitely also promotes eating disorders because everybody feels like they need to like be like that.
Yeah. And it's also, I think, emphasized by how a lot of like, social media influencers that do have, the body, the ideal body of our current generation, they don't admit to the work that they do in terms of,
Exactly.
yeah, like plastic
Hmm.
surgery or photoshopping. It like somebody has to like, tell them, hey, this is bad for the our generation, especially that, glamorizes and idealizes, idolizes these people. So no, yeah, that's a very fair and well said point, I think. Um, so you touched a little bit about how your transition to Spain also just affected how much you wanted to be in control of it, of everything around you. But could you talk a little bit about how this experience of just moving around a lot could also potentially impact other international students around you? Yeah, like in general.
Yeah. I think at least like there's a lot of different reasons why people are like their eating disorders begin, and for me it was definitely, I would say, like control and like uncertainty, and so like trying to like control the uncertainty, if that makes sense. Um, so I guess so I've moved a lot. I've lived in 4 different countries, and I guess the moving periods were always times that I always felt really anxious. I was like, what's going to happen? What's my new life going to be like? What's school going to be like? And I pretty much had I had good control over the rest of my life. I had like good relationships. My parents are super supportive. I had a great friend group, and it was more like, oh, I'm going to leave this friend group behind, and what am I going to do over there? So I think this was a way of like me being in control of my life. I was over controlling everything around me that I was eating. So food became something I that was like what's the word? But it was like something I could definitely be in control of. Again, yeah,
Mhm.
24/7. So that was like kind of my coping mechanism during that period of time. Um, and yeah, I guess that could definitely affect international students who move a lot, because it is a very uncertain time moving to new places, and it's scary, and it's yeah, yeah, I definitely think other people may suffer with it, and there's definitely other ways of dealing with it other than plunging into something like an eating disorder, which is not recommended.
Yeah, yeah. So you talked a little bit about how your parents were really supportive, but before you decided to tell them and before you decided to, just get it over with and just get it out there, how did you like internally feel? You said a little bit about isolated, but did you think you were going to be judged in any way, or what was going on in your head during that time?
Um, yeah, since there's such a big stigma around eating disorders, I felt like I was going to be judged.
Hmm.
And that was why I'd also kept it to myself for so long that I I like I was kind of comfortable with it, if that makes sense. I knew how to deal with it. I knew how to hide it. None of my friends knew about it. So
Hmm.
I think, yeah, I was really, really afraid to tell people, and I think that's definitely associated with the stigma around it. But I think telling people really was the thing that like jump started like my recovery and getting better. Because
Hmm.
if I just like, especially also telling my friends, like when I did Carolina's podcast earlier, um, it was just like nobody in Spain knew about it. And when I kind of like pointed it out, they were like, oh my goodness, like now it all makes sense. Like the
Hmm.
little behaviors that you used to have, like, are all falling into place.
Hmm.
So, um, yeah, I was afraid, but and like all the support that I got out of that, like to this day, like I'm so happy I did that, because they were so sweet and so supportive.
Hmm.
And yeah, I think it's really important to tell people despite what the stigma is and what people think about it, because yeah, not important.
Yeah. So I'm guessing it's been a few years since, your eating disorder has emerged when like started. So looking back in your younger self, like what would you tell your younger self that actually started was becoming more concerned about what she ate, and just being in control of everything.
Looking back, it was just like such a vulnerable period. It was like before just like middle school, the start of middle school.
Mm-hmm.
I was in a new country, and yeah, looking back, telling myself I would this is not the answer. What I went through for the past few years is definitely not what I needed to be more in control of my life. I think I definitely needed to reach out to more people, and I should have yeah, sought help a lot earlier than I did. I think I reached out when I was 10th grade, and it started in 5th grade. There was 5 years of me hiding it from everybody around me, and I think that also increase those feelings of isolation that I experienced because
Mm-hmm.
um I was just like so pushing myself away from those around me.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so talk to people, tell people how you're feeling. If you feel like you're developing symptoms of having an eating disorder, reaching out and making sure that people around you know and can help you, I think is super important and what I should have done when I was younger.
Mm-hmm. I think you also touched upon the subject of like it's hard to like admit that you have an eating disorder to begin with. So where does that, acceptance of yourself of having an eating disorder begin? And how do you just like, overcome this the stigma that's built around it?
Um, I think I think a lot of people, everybody around, well, at least in my case, I'm very fortunate that everybody who I told was so happy to help and so like so supportive
Mm-hmm.
that like I think definitely even if you don't have the most supportive people around you, it's really important to there's so many people out there. There's helplines, there are specialists, there's therapists, there's people I'm sure any like a lot of people out there are genuinely there to help and um I think you just need to forget about the stigma and we need to educate people so that there is no stigma anymore, but aside from that I think that it's just important to go and talk to people about what you're experiencing and that's like the main way to like get
Mm-hmm.
over it.
Mm-hmm. So you talked a little bit about education just now, but like from your personal experiences as an international student, as just a high school student in general, do you think the common person has enough like education or understanding about these eating disorders?
No, so I remember in Madrid we had one unit as a part of like health education in like ninth grade, or not even a unit. Like it was just like all about mental health issues and like eating disorder was probably like a day.
Mm-hmm.
And it was definitely more focused on like the physical telltale signs of it. So like people with like extreme eating disorders like often develop like hair on like their skin, like a really fine layer to keep like the body warm, or like extreme body weight loss, or like signs like that, or like heart issues. So they were like very extreme signs of eating disorders. Also, we only really talked about like anorexia and bulimia, like the two most common, and there's so many others that exist.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like eating disorders are definitely not just like physical, they're definitely mental. And there was not nearly enough discussion around like the mental signs of it and also like the much earlier signs, like before you develop heart problems and have hair on your skin. You definitely there's a whole host of other problems before that that are much more minute, like smaller, but take like a very big toll on your body as they build up.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think more education needs to be done about the more mental issues and like the less like intense or like serious issues that come along with eating disorders. And also, I would say to start the education earlier, like
Mm-hmm.
ninth grade. I think everybody pretty much had a sense of what, maybe not like exactly what they are, but kind of knew, had a gist of what they were in ninth grade. But I definitely, like for me it started fifth, sixth grade, like, and I don't think I was the only one. I'm sure there was other people who had similar feelings at that point. So definitely start the education younger. I think that's super important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I've also been moving around for like my whole life, but I don't think I've had a class about eating disorders like ever. And the fact that you even had a class about, anorexia and bulimia, I can't say it properly. Um, I think that's already something that a lot of international students, not just international schools, but a lot of other schools should just implement in general. And, there's, like you said earlier, there's a bunch of resources that are available on the internet that they could easily just teach us or like easily just show us. And um, us, just learning from the media or from TV shows is obviously not a very good idea in general. So I completely agree
Hmm.
with you there. So overall, what are your hopes in regards to eating disorders in the future and their position in society?
So I definitely think, as I said before, raising more awareness about what they are and like starting this education earlier. And yeah, so if we started earlier, I feel like by the time people are older, they're going to be more aware of what they are and also more willing to help people and recognize those around them with eating disorders.
Hmm.
Um, I also think it's important that the media stops glamorizing like certain body types and therefore like promoting body image, certain eating disorders and certain body types.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, that's super important. And like, yeah, we need to have more filters online that like stop false information about like diet culture to be circulating because I think that also factors and promotes eating disorders as well.
Yeah. Perfect. I think that's a great way to end the interview. Thank you so much for having us for no, yeah. Thank you so much for participating in this interview, Anika.
No,
Um,
thank you so much for having me. I had a great time and I'm so happy that I was able to share my thoughts and opinions.
Thank you very much. It means a great deal for everybody that's watching right now or a recorded version of this online later on, whether it's on YouTube or on Instagram. But, anyways, thank you so much for participating. And we hope to see you in our next interview, in which we will be interviewing racism just in general in American schools. Thank you very much. And I will see you in the next interview. Bye,
Bye.
Annika.